Hi, everybody. My name's Elizabeth,
This is Justin.
and this is Late Night Review.
Tonight, let's talk about media magnification. And to illustrate this, I'm going to use the example of the sun and the moon. Right. So the sun, the moon, they appear the same size. This is why the moon, and when it's full, it's always full, but when it appears full to us, and even when it doesn't, can block out the light of the sun. Because while the moon is 1/400th the size of the sun is 400 times further away. So they appear to be the same size in the sky, although they obviously aren't. And that's a good, in my opinion, at least that's what comes to my mind, a good pictograph. It's a good illustration of media magnification. So you take a story and you put it on news sites, and then it gets picked up by other news sites and then by social media and all this sort of stuff. And what you have is essentially a magnification of an issue, which may or may not be a big deal. So obviously, if there's a terrible, horrible tragedy in the United States or on the planet, then that would be very justified. Everyone's going to want to know as much as they can about it. We'll use a clear example, 9/11, for example. Obviously, everyone was going to cover that. It was rightfully covered because it was a huge deal. So,
Okay.
but when something is not important, and what comes to mind as I'm saying this is, remember when Lindsay Lohan was all over the news? Like Fox News, CNN, MSNBC, breaking news, afternoon news, night news,
No,
fucking news
I don't
everywhere
know.
because she was having some level of crisis in life or something like that. And I could not for the life of me understand why on these news networks, these major news networks, we were looking at pictures of Lindsay Lohan, and I just juxtapose that up against the same time period when an individual won a Nobel Prize or a Nobel Peace Prize or something of that nature, for doing something truly significant in life, but for days, like once an hour or something, I was seeing 5 to 10 minutes of Lindsay Lohan and her horrible mugshot or something like that. This is years ago, and it just comes to mind because it was so ridiculous that it burned into my cerebellum that I was seeing this, and not just like for a day, like 3 days, like 4 days, and I was like, what in the world is happening that we're having to hear about Lindsay Lohan? You know what I mean? Anyway, it was a big deal. That was media magnification. So that Lindsay Lohan just 4 day blackout of her covering her whatever it was that was going on was magnification by the media, which made something that was of zero importance to the world. It's important to her probably and her family, but I'm just saying to the world on a national news, it magnified it. And so people are like, well, I gotta, this is a deal. This is a deal. It's on CNN and Fox News and MSNBC and the afternoon or the evening news with Nora O'Donnell or whatever. So it made it seem like a bigger deal than it was, when it was just someone going through a hard time, and we should have, out of respect, left that person alone. You know what I mean? Another example that you might be familiar with is, what's her name from Full House?
Which one?
The uncle or Aunt Becky.
Becky. Okay.
What's her name?
Lori Loughlin.
Lori Loughlin. Like, yeah, it was not cool that she paid to have her kids, make it into whatever school and blah blah. That wasn't cool, and I agree. But then the media was like, this right here is what's wrong with America. This right here is what we should be focused on and looking at. This is where your hate should go, because she paid $500,000 to have her kids put into a school. It does not affect me. There should be consequences, but it wasn't national news for anything, for any reason.
I would disagree with you on that.
Oh, okay. So I guess this is going by the wayside then.
Well, because
We can't see this right here
because
is a good exchange of words.
because that in that respect, with that particular case, I don't think she would have gotten the punishment she got if it wasn't national news and media wasn't all over those judges and everybody else involved in that case, because it would have been the same deal. She'll pay the judges off or whoever they need to and then move on her way. No one will know anything because nobody's covering it, and it'll just go right by.
True.
And so for that particular case, I would say it needed the coverage it needed.
During the time period when we were watching that, there was presidential assassinations in South America and tens of thousands of people dying in Africa. I don't give a about Lori Loughlin and her little bratty daughters. I just don't. Now, if you want to cover that on like a quick news blurb on the internet or something like that, then okay. But El Chapo was the story. His wife that got like a slap on the hand in like 2 years for whatever after killing tens of thousands of people, if not more, with their drugs and all that shit. That national news.
Mm-hmm.
The advancements we're making toward getting to the moon, I'm sorry, to Mars, or setting up a colony on the moon, or the latest genetic whatever it was that allowed us to feed another 100,000 people. This is important stuff.
Sure.
I'm just sorry, but I have to disagree. I think Lori Loughlin should have been the 50th, the 100th, the 1000th news story buried underneath all that stuff, because I just don't care. But I guess this is why this is a good argument to have, because apparently they've even hit the radar of a national news network.
I see why it did.
I don't.
Because she's the great aunt on Full House. Everything's kosher. Everything's great. This is like the all-American family people want to be. And then it's like, here's reality of what she's like in real life and what she's doing. So it's like, oh, we can get a lot of attention because everybody knows this person. So we'll get the ratings. And so that's what they focus on.
I know why they do it.
Oh,
I know
I
how the
didn't know why.
sausage is made. I just don't agree that it should be made. I just don't agree whatsoever. It's like when that gorilla, Garambe or Harambe or Barambe or Bombay or whatever his name was, got shot. You remember when that was a thing?
Yeah.
Because a child fell into his enclosure?
Yeah.
And so, doing the right thing, that people are like, well, we can't risk the child getting ripped into pieces, so we'll shoot the gorilla. You know what I mean? And I love animals. I don't want animals to be hurt, but if a child falls in a pen with a giant, silverback gorilla or whatever it is, and I have a rifle, that's a dead gorilla. That's a dead gorilla. I'll ask questions about where mom was later. And that there was such a debate and like days of coverage and candlelight vigils for a gorilla that no one knew existed. You know what I mean? Is crazy. And that got so much media attention that I could have vomited. And I believe that what I would have saw in the toilet was some sort of like vomit picture of Harambe, because it was so overwhelming at the time. It's like, who cares? Who cares? I'm sorry that gorilla had to die. In the time period we were debating this, 50 gorillas got ripped into pieces by lions in Africa somewhere. Because that shit happens. Okay, so that one got shot in the head and died in a zoo because a kid fell into the enclosure doesn't hit my radar as important. Sad for a minute, but not important. So that's media magnification. It should have been a blurb somewhere reported in the local, wherever it happened, Tribune. And people have been like, man, I really like to go and see Harambe at the zoo, and now I can't. And I'm sad about that. But at least this human child wasn't ripped into pieces. And I don't want to hear the debate. I don't want to hear the debate that ensued about, I know gorillas, bro. I know gorillas because I studied zoology in school for a semester, and I know that gorilla would have been nice. He would have been good to that child. He would have treated that child like his own, and so for that gorilla to die, I'm not gonna get into it with zoology boy, okay? I don't know that gorilla wasn't going to just toss that kid into a wall and kill it. I'm killing the gorilla. And that's the end of the story. That's the right thing to do. Objectively the right thing to do, unless someone around has a powerful tranq dart. Yes, use the tranq dart. But we didn't. We didn't have it. We had a rifle. It needed to be done. I don't want to hear about it. This was media, in my opinion, malpractice, but definitely media magnification of a story that shouldn't get. And it gets the whole country riled up. And so America getting riled up gets the rest of the world riled up. And then everybody's holding candlelight vigils and shit for this gorilla. And like nobody asks, were we willing to allow this child to be ripped in two? Would you want to go see this gorilla after knowing that it ripped a child in two? And then what would have happened? You know, like, well, you know what? It's a gorilla. It does that shit. All right, there was no telling. But you couldn't just shoot it because money was on that it was going to treat that child well. And it wasn't going to hurt it. But what if it ripped it in two? Oh, well, fuck. Better luck next time or something, right? I'm just saying. It was crazy. And this is media magnification. That wasn't a blurb. And that we had to go through 42 rounds on Twitter, on Facebook, on the next expert and the latest expert and zoology boy in college and all this shit about all these expert opinions. I couldn't believe what I was watching.
Then maybe you need to talk about the fact that media has its priorities mixed up.
They do.
Okay.
That's the
because
point.
they over
They
focus on
magnify
that.
dumb stuff.
And then on a story that does matter,
Yeah.
they give like a blurb.
Right.
Or they effing lie
Yeah.
about what took place
Right.
to make it a bigger story than what it is.
Sure.
And that's
Let me give a clear example. Modern day example of what is a big deal. Objectively a big deal. And if you don't
Biden.
agree with no,
Biden giving the Taliban all that money and war equipment.
that's exactly what I was going to say. That's a clear-cut case. Like that's not political, right? It's not political. There's no person in our political world, in our body politic that was like, you know what? The way we got out of Afghanistan was clean and shiny. That's the way it should have been.
Oh, I heard
And
someone
it
who
was good.
felt that way.
Well, then
it
that's
was
crazy.
Biden. It was Biden himself.
Let's remove it and just try to stick to the media magnification story we're trying to go with now. Okay, so what should still be on the news are the hundreds of, tens of thousands of people that are suffering immensely in Afghanistan because of our involvement in the country for 20 years and then our rapid removal in like 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That should still be being covered. There should be hearings. Congress should be just all over this on both sides of the aisle and in the middle, everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It should be a huge thing. Just huge. Now, let's just say it. If it was Trump, the dude would be hanging from the White House rafters right now.
Oh, they would have impeached him the next day.
Oh, dude would be on fire. They lit him on fire and sent him out, right? What I'm saying is this. What should be all over the news right now still is Afghanistan. What should be what should be focused on to a resolution is this immense budget we're trying, but quote unquote budget that we're trying to pass for the country. Those things should just be everywhere at all times because they are that important. Afghanistan specifically, the budget should only be, it should not even have gone this far. It's only going this far and this long because a ridiculous amount of money was proposed to be spent. But that's another story. Afghanistan should absolutely be focused on. What shouldn't be focused on is about everything else that they focus on. I'm just saying.
What is Congress focusing on? The insurrection.
Oh, the insurrection.
What they title.
That was
the
title
an insurrection.
Shittiest insurrection I've ever seen.
Because that's not what it was.
It was like drunk people wandering off a college campus into some building they shouldn't have been in. That's what that was. In reality, a lot of people, and a few of which did really stupid shit. Mm-hmm. And they're going to jail for years for it. So I'm just saying, setting up an army around the Capitol building and like having a better green zone there than we did in Iraq in an actual war zone. How many times can we make ourselves look stupid?
Oh,
in the matter of a year or two.
Apparently, the year ain't over yet.
we look like a bunch of just drunk assholes running around as a superpower. But it's not the people. It's the politicians.
Mm-hmm.
But we need to do a better job. And not a better job, we need to do the right job. This upcoming election, I'm not voting for anyone I don't believe in. They don't have to be a saint. And they don't have to be, in Churchill or, Washington. But man, they need to have intelligence and integrity. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Intelligence and integrity would be so far and beyond the pale of what we have right now, not to jump on the whole bashing our own politicians thing again, but they suck. They suck. They're horrible. Yeah, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't let them run a corn dog stand and they're running, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's horrible. Anyway, that's a little off the topic. One thing we seem to get decent with the media, but one might say nauseatingly so, is that we cover the presidential elections a good deal, right? Obviously, for like 16 months prior to the election, you hear about that every single day. But what we don't focus on enough, nearly enough, is congressional and Senate races. You know what I'm saying? That's huge. That's huge, and that's where the power's at. While the president can veto, it can be overridden by Congress and the Senate. That needs to be much more important.
Our dog has decided he's going to eat his dinner and breakfast all at once now while we're recording.
Right.
And then he's now wanting to go in and out of the house.
While we were watching TV, he was comatose in front of us. And now all of a sudden,
he's like, oh, I
it's
guess
time
we
to
got
eat the loudest food out of a metal bowl. So it resonates throughout the entire kitchen. But you know what? It's fine. It's, that's not a big thing in life.
But
what
that's
is a big
the
thing
noise that you're hearing.
Is media magnification. So just getting back onto that, because I don't know, how many minutes are we rolling into here? Like 20 minutes. I'm sure people are tired of listening to me by now. Media magnification is a huge problem because the average person is too busy with actual life to like sit there and focus and filter out what is and is not important. Okay, so a good deal of people don't focus on any sort of major media, newspaper or anything like that. They get what they get through social media and stuff like that. But that is just downriver from the stuff that media is covering, the main national media, what they call now the legacy media and stuff like, right? So that's downriver, downstream from what they're focusing on. They still at this point in the country set the precedent for what is and is not newsworthy. They still do that. Newspapers had their day, magazines had their day. It is 24/7 news networks like CNN, Fox, MSNBC, CBS, NBC, blah, blah, blah. Everything else is more or less downriver. And what they focus on is what people think is important, typically. And even if they don't, it's what's up in front of us, right? It's what's up in front of us. Who has the time when you're trying to feed your family and make a life? Who has the time to just spend hours filtering through to see what truly is important? Journalists are responsible for that. That is their sacred duty, is to find what is important and make sure that we all know it. In a democracy, if we're not informed, then the democracy dies. End of story. End of story. And in this day and age, when news is just fluttering in and out, as something as large as Afghanistan, the debacle that happened in Afghanistan can filter out of importance in a week, and then we could be focusing on, Lord only knows what we're focused on, is insane. And so it is more now than ever important that what is on TV, that what the media is covering is actually that which has significant value to the lives of Americans.
Yeah.
And they're not, because they magnify that which gets them clicks and views, not which is important. They are responsible for what they cover.
And it's like what gets them clicks and views, but it's also, I hate to keep using this word, not that I've used it in this conversation, but everyone's heard it so much that it's what agenda they're trying to push.
Yeah.
And it'll give them their clicks and views from whoever agrees with that agenda.
Yeah.
A good one that comes to my mind is the Rittenhouse trial. Most people have just got the information they have based off of what anchors have said on whatever news network they listen to, and or whatever article they've read online or in the paper or wherever else, whatever news source they get. And like you said, most people don't have the time to sit there and filter through all this to find the actual truth. I
Mm-hmm.
I find it intriguing, those trials. So I actually watched every single hour, 8 hours a day for like 9 days through that whole trial.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, then I just go ahead and turn on the TV and hear what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like a bunch of effing lies. Yeah. And you talk to the average person like, hey, did you check out any of that? And they're like, oh, I saw the article, whatever. They have the information that was expelled to them, altered, however it was altered from whatever station they were watching, and that's the end of it. It's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Because if they would have taken the time to actually educate themselves on it, they would see how much they're being lied to by whatever station they're listening to.
Right.
Obviously, with that particular case, you're going to get a lot of lies from the left side. They were pushing, okay, let's riot now that Kyle got found not guilty. It's like he was found not guilty by not just a judge. Okay, it was a jury trial. All those jury members said not guilty. And I'm thankful they did, because after watching that case, aka no case, that the prosecution had, which was just absolutely absurd. It should have never made it there. And what people should be outraged about is the fact that taxpayers' dollars got wasted on that. That's what people should be mad, not because this guy got found not guilty.
It's hard for me to get mad about the amount of money they spent on that, though, when we just gave $30 billion worth of shit to the Afghanistan.
But I'm just saying,
and
this is the shenanigans we're dealing with in our society.
Yes, right.
This is what our media decides to alter, and so they can get their clicks and views, and further push their agenda and continue to divide the country.
That's an excellent case that you just brought up for us to talk about further, this point about media magnification, because the Rittenhouse trial was just absolutely focused on for 9-10 days, until the actual judgment came down of not guilty. But in the same time period, there was a trial going on wherein there was a black man who shot at police officers because they didn't properly identify themselves or something to that effect. And so he thought his house was being invaded, and so he shot at him. And one might think, well, God, in this environment, based off of the media, that what we see in the media, surely he got the death penalty for that. Even though he didn't kill a cop, surely he's going to life for prison or whatever. He got acquitted because they found him not guilty, because the police officers did not properly identify themselves or whatever the case might be. And this black man, rightfully so, got off scot-free. And that came down like the day of or day after the Rittenhouse thing went down. And of course, because like you were saying, there's an agenda on the left and on the right. It was covered in one way or another way, or not at all. But they magnified this quote unquote racist, but in reality, no proof to even indicate that he was racist individual, white guy named Rittenhouse. And just made such a big thing about how people of color should really be afraid in America now, because a white man can kill other white men that were trying to kill him, and that's racist. And so people of color, or what they I guess are calling POCs now, which I think is derogatory and stupid,
gosh.
But whatever. People of color, i.e. those not white, should be just terrified, because if a white man can kill other white men and get away with it, well, how racist is that? What are we talking about? But why not magnify this case where this black man got off scot-free, as he should, because it doesn't tie in with the agenda. So in this particular case, the media magnification further worked to make that, which I'm not saying Rittenhouse thing wasn't important, but we have to say that this other case was as equally important, right? So anyway, of course, if we all know, we're not stupid. We're intelligent enough to understand that its agenda is being pushed. It's media magnification. What you magnify on people will naturally, that's where the conversation's going to go. And I'm just saying that there are so many more interesting and time-worthy things to be focused on in America and in the world. There's so many interesting things that people are doing and advancements that we're making and things like that. There's so many horrible things that are taking place in our government and in societies, in our society and in neighboring societies that affect our society and stuff that should be absolutely magnified, rightfully so, because they're big deals. But when we media magnify stuff that just doesn't make any sense, these journalists, more than not doing us any good, are doing us incredible harm. More now than ever, they have the sacred freaking duty of making sure that they are honest with themselves and then properly portray that which is important
Yes.
to we the people, now more than ever.
Absolutely. It is, I mean, it just goes to show what money can do.
Mm-hmm.
And sadly, in this particular event, money's going to kill this country because that money is being used to detour the truth. And there are too many people who refuse to acknowledge that that's an existent problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't have any answers to it, you know. And again, I'm sorry Harambe had to get shot. I'm just saying that. I just want to go on the record. I'm not like a gorilla hater.
That wasn't this year.
No, that was like 5 or 7 years ago.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a long time ago. That was semi meant to be a joke. But, you
Okay.
know, sad the guy had to die. But I'm glad the kid's alive. That's just to illustrate that media magnification. That I still remember that just goes to show how they just burned it into my brain because it was just, you know what I mean? And people say, oh, well, turn off the TV. Well, I need to know what's going on in the world. And every now and then there's a little sliver of like down there where you got the running words at the bottom of the screen, the pylon or whatever they call it, where it's like, oh, and something significant is actually happening in the planet. China's deploying 17 ships to the middle of the Pacific to da-da-da-da-da. I mean, stuff that actually would have ramifications for us if something south, went south with a nuclear power or something, But I have to, like, focus and squint my eyes to get that because Harambe's fat is covering the wording. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, media magnification.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, if you're listening to this before you go to bed, sleep tight.
If you're not already asleep.
If you're not already asleep. You got to leave a comment. You got to leave a comment. If you listen to this and you don't leave a comment, you're wrong. So leave a comment.
I thought you're not listening.
Thanks, guys.
But thanks for the view.
Yeah.
Like, share, and subscribe.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
And one last thing. I want to wish our subscribers a happy new year. I would have to say 2021 kind of sucked.
Yeah, it did.
Big time. There were a great pile of great things, and I'm trying to focus on the good stuff. So thankfully I have good health, and my family does as well. So we'll focus on those good things.
Yes. And do yourself a favor and don't make a New Year's resolution. Don't do it.
And don't
You know
make
what I mean?
a New Year's
Don't
resolution
make a
not
New
to
Year's-
make a New
No,
Year's resolution.
just don't make one.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you won't fail. You know what I mean?
Aim low. Aim so low that you can't miss.
That's right.
The famous words of Marge Simpson.
You'll thank me for that.
All right. Have a good night, everybody.